Hello everyone, it's Fairykin. And today I will be making the Hulkling from the Young Avengers comic. If you don't know, the Hulkling, also known as Theodore Teddy Altman, is a superhero appearing in Marvel Comics. The character has been depicted as a member of the Young Avengers, a team of superheroes in the Marvel Universe. Hulkling's character is patterned after the Hulk. With shape-shifting abilities and superhuman strength, the Hulkling is the extraterrestrial hybrid offspring of an enhanced Kree warrior, Captain Marvel, and Skrull royalty, Princess Anel, resulting in various unique abilities derived from the unique combination of his parents' genetics. His powers exceed those of ordinary individuals of either race. His shape-shifting abilities allow him to impersonate others, independently alter parts of his body, and manifest different physical abilities. For example, he can form claws, extend his reach, and create body armor, and grow wings, which enable him to fly. Hulkling can also use shapeshifting to increase his body's density and composition, giving him a very strong resistance to pain and injury. Something else you should know about this character is that he is an absolute gay icon. Recently in the franchise, Hulkling and Wiccan got married. And it's beautiful! Love is beautiful, oh my god. This particular project is also a commission, so all of my design choices have been made for me. Thank God, because I can't think of anything right now. I'm making this version with this costume, you're welcome. Now, to start, I had to decide between a Holt hide and a Jackson Jekyll head. Now, I am a fan of Monster High, so I realized that these are basically the same, more or less, since Jackson turns into Holt in the Monster High lore. And they probably used the same mold when they made the toys, but I don't know. I had to take the face paint off to be able to really compare the two. I removed his eyebrow piercing, which was surprisingly easy, and then I took off his fire hair helmet. Hairmit, if you will, which was also surprisingly easy. I take off their printing to compare their faces. I don't know if it's just me, but I think Holt Hyde's face is slightly more angular. The side profile looked different, alright? I don't know what to tell you. I think they're different. I think they're different. So, onto the base doll. Initially, I was going to use a Nathan Rott for this because I could just sculpt over his weird skeletal body, but the more I looked at his sculpting, the more it inspired me to make something else using this doll. I don't know what yet, but I like it. So instead, I opted for a Deuce Gorgon from my personal collection. This is the first time I'll be using a doll that I played with from my childhood. I already stole the shoes for my Dan Avedon custom, and he already has paint on him, so he's been incomplete for a while. Jen, I hope you know all the childhood memories that this custom holds. He's very special! So I took his head off, stripped him down, and sanded the hell out of his little plastic body because he is in for some body modifications. So a while ago, I made a doll of handsome Squidward, and that taught me some things. I used epoxy sculpt for all of his mods, and he is just too heavy. I can't put him anywhere. So I had to get some lightweight air dry clay instead. Also, that means that it'll be much cheaper, just letting you know right now. I begin his mods by building up his musculature. To be completely honest, I wish I had a Manitor doll, because that's the body type that I want. But that doll is so rare. But I want one so bad. If anyone has one that they don't want anymore, I will buy it from you. Please. Please. So I had to do my best with what I already had. Like epoxy, you can use water to smooth out and blend between the sculpting material and the plastic. I had to do several passes of this because if I didn't let one pass dry before I moved on to another section, the place that I just worked on would get all squished, and that's not what I want. And this clay takes about 24 hours to dry completely, so the body mods took about a week and a half to complete because I had to do so many layers. So many layers, you have no idea. After I finished building up his muscles, I added all his scales and body armor. He got some pointy shoulders and some pointy elbows, and I gotta sculpt all the pointies. Why am I like this? I also sculpted the edges of his gloves over his fingies, and I added his little scaly finger plates. Can I just say that the fingers were so hard to sculpt? It took me an entire day just to get the hands right, and they came out really well. It was worth it. After everything has been sculpted, I can begin changing his skin tone from varied to green with pan pastels. For the first layer, I didn't add a layer of MSC first because the clay is kind of a spongy texture after it dries, and the plastic surface was textured enough so the pigment stuck without any texture from the MSC. I used Sharpies on the joints / high wear areas because the Sharpie actually penetrates through the plastic, staining it, so if any of the layers of pastels chip off, it won't be seen. It'll be a little secret. Nobody has to know that my paint chips because joints are really hard to work with. I paint the gloves black, and while I was doing this, one of the scales on his fingers broke off, and I realized that the almost styrofoam density of this clay won't work for these types of delicate details. So I ripped them all off and did them again with epoxy sculpt, but I'll come back to that later. Here I am adding my first layer of Mr. Super Clear while wearing a mask. I find that the normal fabric masks work the best for me. They still keep the fumes out, and it actually fits my face. The other more heavy-duty masks really, they don't fit. This particular mask is handmade by Shopni Akumba on Instagram. This is a black-owned small business. They take such good care of their customers. I received a little note with my order, and it was just so nice. It was delightful. I'll leave a link to their page in the description if any of you are interested. I've noticed with the pan pastels and Mr. Super Clear technique that some of the tone from the base you work on shows through a little bit, and I didn't want a blue tone from the underneath, so I painted one layer of thin acrylic paint over his face. I layered pastels on the head and body until it was opaque. This took about 4 to 6 layers depending on the area. Now I move on to body blushing. I add highlights and lowlights. The first layer didn't quite work the way I wanted to because Mr. Super Clear sometimes darkens tones of paint after it dries, and the light green just faded back into the darker tone, so I did the same thing with a bright yellow later, and this combated that effect. I also added darker tones where shadows would naturally be cast, and here are the hands after I fixed the scales with epoxy sculpt and painted them the right color. Here I'm doing the same thing with the body blushing, except I'm using watercolor pencils that I sanded down on a piece of sandpaper. I can pick up the pigment on a wet paintbrush and paint it on directly. You can also take the powder you get from this technique to use it for body blushing if you don't have soft pastels. Just make sure that you seal it in really well with Mr. Super Clear. Okay, so the Hulkling has these cool little glovies with pointies on them, and I tried to add that with air dry clay a while ago, but it fell off. So then I added them with epoxy, just like the hands, because I wanted it to stay on. I painted them gold, and the problem with this is that When I went to try and pose his hands, the points broke off and restricted his movement quite a bit. I want the doll to be as accurate as possible, but I still want a good range of posability. So I talked to Jen, the person that will be receiving this doll, my customer, if you will, and we agreed to leave off the little points and just paint the cuffs gold. I gotta say, the hands look pretty good with the rest of his body. I like it a lot. It's nice. It looks good. It's acceptable. This bit is a tiny bit out of sequence, but before I painted the head, I tried to fill in the divot that was left from his hairnet earlier with air dry clay. And it did work, but because of the smooth surface, the clay just slid right off after it dried. But this did work in my favor because I needed to make a wig for him anyway. So I combed out some yarn and flat ironed it, and started gluing sections on the inside first to make sure it looks like hair is actually growing out of the head. Then I glued a layer over that, and filled it in a circular pattern until it filled the whole head, except for a side part. To create a smooth part, I glue on a weft backwards, going the opposite direction that I will have it laying later. After that dries, I flip that over and add a second line of wefts facing backwards. I flip that, and boom! You got some nice looking hair. Well, okay, it'll look better later, don't worry about it. I have the body mods, recoloring, blushing, and hair more or less done. So now I'm gonna start on the wings. This will be a rather complicated process, so I will be making the wings one bit at a time in this 3-part series. First, I plan out the shapes. I made 4 sketches. The first was to get a general idea of what I want them to look like. The second was focused on stability and size. With the third, I rethought the base connection, but I noticed that this part was just a little bit too long. So I shortened that in the 4th sketch, and huzzah! It looks like it'll work perfectly. I don't know, I haven't built it yet. I cut out all the pieces out of rainbow popsicle sticks. This wasn't planned, it's just all that was available. And I cut some pieces off to make them look a bit more natural. This is the formation that I want them in. I bought some tiny hardware to put them together, but I cannot Avengers assemble them quite yet. We must wait until part 2 to see that. And right now is a good time to tell you to subscribe and ring that bell so that you won't miss part 2, but it's really up to you. You have free will. I hate putting in plugs. It feels awful. It feels bad. I also have an Instagram and Twitter if you want to follow me over there, and I also have a little Discord community. That's lots of fun. Lots of shenanigans go on over there. There was this one time I complained about the fact that I accidentally got glitter in my sheets. Don't worry about it. It's a good time. There will be a link to everything in the description if you are so inclined. Thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate all the support that I've received as of late. And right here, I really want to tell you that if there's someone in your life right now that you really want to be affectionate towards and give a lot of support to, but they just don't need it or want it right now, accept that and give that loving energy towards yourself instead. It's so important to give that to yourself as often as you can. Thank you for being here. Bye! I feel so awkward when I say goodbye. I feel like I need a better outro, but what do I even do? How do YouTubers do what they do? I don't understand. I have social anxiety. 20 minutes worth of audio. Holy balls.